to share with you Liszt's Consolation. This is the third one, but it's the most famous. I recently recorded the second one, which is also quite good. Generally, before Liszt wrote these particularly poetic pieces, he'd start with a poem. For example, for Lystrum, he'd start with what love is, or what the night is, and so on. He'd use a poem, not one he wrote, but one by a contemporary. A very famous one. But this piece doesn't have one. Right, this is very interesting. His competition with Chopin was a healthy one. Liszt even helped Chopin launch his artistic career in Paris. How did they play it back then? First, Liszt would play, and after a while, he'd put out the lights, and then Chopin would take over. Everyone really thought the lights had just gone out. They used candles back then, and he'd blow them out on purpose. Liszt really knew how to put on a show. He was truly incredible, the ultimate performer and the most charismatic pianist. I once released an album called My Piano Hero. Yes, Piano Hero. I really do think that title is very, very accurate, and it fits perfectly. Back then, during his time, Liszt was honestly like the Beatles or Michael Jackson were in their heyday. Wherever he went, crowds would gather, people would be amazed. Everyone would be lying down under the piano, even tossing their rings onto the stage. He was truly a superstar, really a megastar. But he was also greatly inspired, or perhaps even challenged, by Chopin, you could say. So when he heard Chopin creating all those poetic nocturnes and other beautiful pieces, he also wanted to try something like that. Something truly extraordinary. So he chose to use all sorts of titles like consolations, dreams, or fantasies. It's because he wanted to take a different path from Chopin. Liszt was more extreme. He'd start by writing triple piano, or pianissimo, and then mark it legato-sissimo. These are quite exaggerated musical terms. Very, very, very connected, and it had to be constant. Right from the start, it's very, very soft, triple soft. So his approach was, in my opinion, he felt that in the realm of double or single piano, Chopin had already achieved perfection. So he decided to compete in the triple piano realm. Personally, I think he wanted to distinguish himself from Chopin. We all know his technique, the pole riff, but he also wanted to make a mark in terms of poetic expression. He wanted to draw a comparison with Chopin. That's just my take. The facts might be different, but that's the feeling I get. For instance, look at Schumann. I think he really admired him too. In one of Schumann's major works, he actually wrote down, this part is Chopin, and this part is Paganini. Look, this is it. And then he specifically wrote a tribute to Chopin. It's like Schumann saying, I can write Chopin's music too. This kind of tribute is actually a bit, like, watch me do one for you. Right. Now, Chopin is the most interesting. Let's talk about Chopin first, then come back to this piece. Who did Chopin write his first piano etude for? Liszt. Exactly. And the funniest part is, he followed Liszt's technique. Chopin was like, hey, Liszt, aren't you the great one? Isn't your technique amazing? I'll give you one to practice too. It's all a bit of healthy competition, right? But the most fun part was it was Tausig back then, right? Because back then, Tausig and Liszt, they took it to such an extreme. Never mind the people fainting in the salons, just completely overwhelmed, going crazy, couldn't even get close to him. So they'd kiss his dog, that kind of crazy. But anyway, there was a challenger named Tausig. That guy's technique was incredible. He was all about improvisation, and they had all these different styles right there in the neighborhood. They'd set up a piano with a huge crowd on one side, like Street Fighter, right on the street, a whole group here. like a face-off at a train station nowadays. A crowd on this side. And back then, it was just in a tiny, narrow street. And then the two of them, what I heard that was even more exciting, was he was in that room in a very narrow alleyway, and he was on the second floor with a piano, and he played first. When he finished, he'd stop, and then Tausig would play on a piano in a room across the street. And back then, the level they played at, it was like, for example, they'd start with a simple etude, and then they'd start adding all these flourishes. They'd mix opera into the etudes, and then add Chopin's, I heard it was Liszt's faux follets mixed with Chopin's. Right? And how they played these two together. Anyway, I heard there was something like this. First, Tausig provoked Liszt. Tausig took one of Liszt's pieces and played it in his own style, maybe something like Mazeppa. Since we weren't there, we don't know exactly how he played it, but it must have been fun. Then Liszt got annoyed and mashed up that Chopin etude with his own faux follets. Anyway, what they were doing back then was it was even crazier than, say, that piano duel in The Legend of 1900. You've all seen that, right? This was even more intense than that. Okay, so now Liszt, his return to music itself. So he wrote three of these consolations. This is the third one. And it starts like this. You can play it with your left hand. Then first use the right hand, then back to the left hand. For this, you can press the left pedal all the way down. No problem. This is Fly Away. Fly away. Getting faster. Slow down, then go, change the pedal, and change your fingers. Like this, you can play it with that kind of lingering, connected feel. Right, anyway. With Liszt, you can be you can perform it with a lot of imagination and fantasy.